Well, thank you for joining us today. Just, start off with the beginning. Tell us who you are and why you're running for governor.
Well, I'm Lisa Fritsch. I'm a concerned citizen of Texas. I love Texas. I love this party. I've been a Republican since second grade when my mom stopped the Vega and explained to me why she wouldn't go on public assistance. The party is in trouble. The state of Texas is in trouble. And I have felt a calling that I need to jump in and make sure that we go down the right road for the 21st century, for not just for the state of Texas, but also for the values of the Republican Party to survive.
Do you feel that the current field of candidates is inadequate?
I do. I think that the way this party in general has been electing candidates, passing the baton, relying on the status quo, is not enough to take us into the 21st century.
Well, Greg Abbott's considered the presumptive nominee. Do you feel that the baton's just been passed to him, that no one's supposed to get in his way? Is that the feeling you get of how the party is working right now?
Yes, I think that that's pretty obvious, that everyone was presented. It's meet the candidate, not choose your candidate. And what happens with career politicians is they end up campaigning for the next position their whole lives. And if the Republican Party is going to be successful, get people excited about this party again, people excited and know what it really means to be a Republican, we have to let people have a choice.
What differentiates you from Abbott or even the other candidates that are currently involved?
Well, I have a lot of respect for the other candidates in the race, let me say that to begin with. And I think they offer a lot of necessary things that the Republican Party, what the Republican Party stands for. Second Amendment rights, states' rights, all of those things that are necessary. What I see them lacking is what's sufficient to be relevant in the future, and that is policies that speaks to the larger cultural conversation, the 18.4+ % of Texans living in poverty, true immigration reform that speaks to the dignity, independence, and prosperity of our immigrant population, and the way they've addressed the life issue has been largely hurting us in this party with women and other people who don't see us as having compassion on that issue and understanding that the life issue is more than about laws, condemnation, and Supreme Court cases. The life issue is about looking at life as a miracle, speaking to the dignity and the creation and the beauty of the lives of those young women who are being preyed upon by the deceptions of the left.
Most polls right now show Abbott at about 60 to 70% if the election was held today, and he's obviously raised tens of millions of dollars. What is your plan to overcome that and reach out to voters who do assume he is the...
Well, first of all, the election is not being held today.
Yeah.
And there is this assumption by, I think, very well-informed voters like you and me that he is the successor. However, we also have seen polls where we know that his name ID is not quite that high. And listen, what keeps me getting up every morning and fighting this battle and staying on this mission is I know this one thing. And if I didn't know this, I would probably not be running and be on this mission. And that is, if I could talk to every Texan in this state, they would overwhelmingly choose me in this primary, and we would win this election by huge margins. I know that, and that's why I'm running. And so my job is not to focus on what my opponent is doing, the money they're raising, but to talk to as many Texans as possible.
What do you feel are the three top issues facing Texas that you are most, or that you're most passionate about?
I would say everyone in Texas is proud of this economy. We know that people are coming here in droves because it's a great place to raise a family. You get a lot more bang for your buck. It's a great state, great people, the economy's strong. So I'm very passionate about keeping that economy strong, but equally as passionate about making that economy more productive by reaching out to those people who are living below the poverty line and investing them in this Texas economy as well. Lending opportunities to people who have not ordinarily have them, but who also want to be successful in Texas is something I'm strongly passionate about. That's the first one. You want all three?
Sure.
And I think I've mentioned them to you. I'm passionate about education. I think that we have a broken system, a one-size-fits-all model that has been so outdated, trapping kids in their zip codes. We have to look at another way for parents to have a true decision when it comes to how they educate their children. Involved in that would also be looking at different models for upper education, upper grade levels, 9th through 12th grade, that might need to focus on technical training skills or vocational training skills that can have graduates out of high school job ready to be apprentices or take on tech sector jobs and not necessarily have to always put people on the university track. That's the second thing. And I'm very, very passionate about the life issue. It's going to be a big topic in this general election, you know, considering that Wendy Davis is the opponent and she has made that issue, that's what catapulted her into national success, that we have got to be able to address that issue from a different place. You know, Margaret Thatcher said something that is very relevant. You win the argument, you win the vote. The way we win that argument is the way I described before, which is to talk about life from the standpoint of being a miracle, and that these women's bodies are a miracle, not laws, condemnation, Supreme Court cases. We win the argument that way, we will also win those votes.
Well, you know, there is a group of, or a percentage of the Republican Party that says, or is starting to say, that we should just leave the abortion issue alone, that it's not a conservative or a liberal issue, it's just something that should be left out of politics, and it's one of the reasons why the Republican Party is losing. What do you have to say to them? I
say life is worth fighting for. It's a personal issue for me, considering that 1,800 black babies are killed every day in the United States. In Texas, aborted at twice the rate of their population. It's an economic issue, and the reason that those statistics are the way they are is because these centers are located in these economic depressed areas. That's why the anti-poverty plan, so that people can be lifted up out of that cycle that has them become victims of the democratic machine. All of these things are interconnected and need to be worked on in tandem.
Well, you know, on the poverty issue, as of this year, Texas ranks #1 in food stamp recipients, about 4 million people per month. How do you propose reforming either the food stamp program or welfare in general?
Well, only 1% of the budget from Health and Human Services is relegated to those means-tested programs like you mentioned. That's a high number that's plaguing the entire country. I believe that instilling a microfinance program like I want to do, which borrows, it's not something new, borrows from Perry's Texas Enterprise Fund and commits to investing in people in these communities who want to start a business. Let's make them capitalists. Let's make them part of the system. Will have a big effect on getting them off of the government's purse.
Well, it's interesting you bring up Texas Enterprise Fund, because one thing we've done is a lot of research into these subsidy or grant programs, and you know, they seem to be filled with accusations of cronyism, corporate welfare, you know, especially the big four, Perry, Strauss, Dewhurst, and Abbott seem to be the ones who have received the most benefit from these type of programs, right, from interests who have received money from the state or contracts from the state, and in return have given these guys millions of dollars, right, in political contributions.
You talk about welfare, right? A lot of people have argued, well, this is just welfare for people who don't really need it.
Yeah,
I've heard that.
Well, how do you tackle the political game that is considered to be cronyism?
Well, to me, these people's lives are not a game. I think that there definitely is the argument that this is basically giving a pat on the back to your friends and crony capitalism, and that really needs to be evaluated. I would also say, if you want to get to the bottom of something like that, who better than to elect than someone outside that system who can go in and look at that from an objective point of view, the people's candidate. So can't argue with me there. The thing is, though, the other part of that is we can't deny it has been an economy booster for Texas. It's created a lot of jobs, and everyone in Texas is happy about that. But we don't want cronyism, and that's why I think that you create something like the Texas Free Enterprise Fund. It's great for the top down, but also let's look out for, you know, the little guy, the bottom up.
Well, do you have any specifics in mind for reducing that? For example, I know there's been some proposals where if you've received a government grant or received a government contract, you're prohibited from donating to political campaigns. Do you think that is a viable solution, or do you think there are other options?
Well, I think that's one solution. I think another solution could be that, one of the things about bringing the jobs in is that a lot of those structures already have employees moving here. What about having a program that also employs the Texans who live here so that they have a job, not bringing the companies here, right, who already have their structure in place, but startups that are needing Texans to fill those jobs.
Yeah, on to education. The big mantra is, get people, or get us out of federal control or federal influence of education. But in the past 10 years, federal dollars have quadrupled, or the percentage of the education budget, the federal portion has quadrupled in the past 10 years. How do you eliminate federal influence when you cut off nearly $6 billion, or just over $6 billion of the budget, if you were to do so?
Well, the thing about the Texas education system right now is that, they cut the $5.4 billion, and a lot of teachers and a lot of Democrats were upset about that. What needs to happen before people start talking about money and how it's financed is for the structure to be fixed. Right now, the structure's broken, the system's broken, the curriculum's broken. Until you can define what the education in Texas needs to look like, then I think it's premature to talk about how it's funded. I think so often we talk about the money that needs to go to something, and we don't even know what that something should look like and how it should function.
So do you feel that the financing issues like Robin Hood have prioritized things in the wrong direction, or have started, I know a lot of people talk about child-centered funding, or, starting from the bottom up.
Well, Robin Hood has been very bad for Texas. Let me tell you what I would like to see happen so that there's true choice. I would like to see, even though I'm for local control, I know this doesn't really support that, and there would have to be a system in place, experts, people much smarter than me, get in a room and hammer this out and figure it out. But I would like to see property taxes, some of that money go to the state, and then the state allocates a certain amount that goes to each child in Texas. Therefore, the money that goes to that child follows them wherever that parent decides to send them to school. That way, every child is funded equally. There's true choice. There's competition in the education marketplace, so that you can no longer say, oh, well, we've lost all these students, so you've hurt the public school. No, the public school will be competing so that a parent can say, oh, I want to send my child to this school or that school. And not all communities necessarily need that, because there's small towns like where I grew up, the public school's great. Everybody loves their public school. They wouldn't want to go anywhere else. But the fact is, there are students and parents who are trapped in zip codes, and that's not fair to their child. Their child deserves and should have a quality education.
The other big issue that's facing us is immigration. And one thing I read from your campaign website was you state, I quote, you want to move immigrants towards legal residency status. Some might say that's doublespeak for amnesty. What's the difference between the two?
Well, I would ask people, do they think it's amnesty right now, not to have people accounted for, but people who are not legal residents, not documented, receiving benefits, and there's nothing being done about it? A lot of people would agree with me that what we already have right now is de facto amnesty. It's not enough to withhold and deny. Someone has to, even if it's the hard conversation to have, this is what a governor does. They don't duck and not answer questions on immigration reform or talk about how they're going to handle the DREAM Act. The fact is that this immigrant population is a growing demographic in Texas. They embody the American spirit. They're hardworking, they're faithful, they have families, they're here to work. What is wrong with having a system where they are legally accounted for, documented, undocumented work visas, so that they can play by the rules, pay their taxes, be invested in this economy. That's very important to answer that question, answer to that population from that perspective. It's not citizenship. No one's saying anything about citizenship, but legal residency status, absolutely.
What do you say to the people who say, well, what about the people that are already waiting in line to get legal residency status or visas? Do you feel that, you know, they shouldn't be a part of the conversation, or it's a compromise they're going to have to accept?
Well, I think all immigrants should be a part of the conversation. I mean, let's face it, immigration is a valuable asset to Texas, to America. It's what our country was founded on. It's about being the beacon of freedom. And the last thing we want to do is have qualified, educated people here who want to work and be part of this economy and say, oh, sorry, you have to go back. We want them to stay here. We invest in them and we want to keep them here. So absolutely, it's not just you know, an issue with, I think, you know, people who have come across the border. It's a larger issue that speaks to our immigrant population as a whole.
Well, one last thing. This is a little more a lighter subject, if you will. I've got two pictures here of two well-known pictures of two.
I see the one. I recognize it already.
Of two Republican governors, you know, greeting Obama at the airport. As governor, how would you greet Obama at the airport?
I like them both, actually. I think you hit them hard and you put your hand around them. It's the Texas way. I love that. It's Jan Brewer and Chris Christie. Yeah. Oh, fantastic. So, that's great.
Well, I appreciate you coming in and talking with us. And how can people find out more about your campaign?
Please join us on our website, Lisa for Texas. That's the number 4texas.com. Join us on our Facebook fan page. Twitter at Lisa for Texas. We really do want to talk to everybody. You know, this is, you know, we are running it's a fun campaign. We're enjoying being David in this, and we know that when people hear what we have to say, they want this. You know, I just ask people, you know, is the Republican Party all that it should be? Do we have the candidates right now that we want and we deserve? Are we saying things that are relevant to the larger conversation? Are we talking about things that people really want to talk about that really matter in people's lives? I think most people who are watching this would probably answer with me, no. And we can do better. Texas deserves better. This party deserves better. That's why I'm running.
All right, well, I appreciate it. And
thank you.
Best of luck to you.
Hey, thanks a lot. You got $50? Just joking. Well, not really. No, just kidding.